Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 9 of the super tiny mini acrylic landscape paintings. We got a dark and sinister episode today. Well, maybe not sinister, but it's definitely going to be dark because I've got a whole lot of black on my brush and I'm just smearing it on, covering the entire tiny little canvas. We're starting off with a black background today. It's going to be kind of like a foresty scene, maybe at dusk, maybe at dawn. Who knows? It's sunrise, but not all the light is going to be hitting yet. You don't actually see that just yet because right now we're just putting in the darkness. But later on, the sun's going to shine and everything's going to be good. That said, you won't see it in the video, but I do leave this to dry for at least an afternoon, but preferably if you're doing this at home, depending on your paint, you should probably leave it to dry for an entire night. But once it's dried, and awesome transition here into the next day, you should start up with a clean, black looking canvas like this. And what I've got on my brush here, it's a very tiny brush. I got a mixture of some white, some yellow, and a little bit of slow dry medium, so that once I've put this paint on, I can grab a not a slow brush, a clean dry brush, not a slow brush, but a clean dry brush. And I can just pull that paint upwards and it'll start to fade the further we pull it. And then with the remnants of that paint that's on the brush, I'm just going to put in a couple of diagonal strokes here. Those diagonal strokes are going to be the sunlight that is hitting through the trees, maybe over the hill of the forest, and landing down here over what's going to be kind of like a riverbank kind of scene. Oh, I totally hit the edge of the canvas there and made it go boom. That's okay. Stuff happens. Not everything can be perfect. And you can do this as many times as you want. You can add in more of this color and add in another layer, and the more you do it, obviously the brighter it's going to get. We're going to put in some more of these sunbeams later, but for now I'm just going to pull a little bit of this light color very horizontally to resemble a little bit of a reflection in the water that's going to be coming towards us in the foreground. And obviously we're going to be making this a forest, so I'm just going to put in a little bit of an indication of some trees here, just with the very tip of the brush, diagonal strokes, smudge some paint on and just make it go fatter towards the bottom. Now I like to just do one side of the tree first because the sunbeams, they are coming from the left, which means that our left side of these trees are going to be a smidge brighter than the right. So I do the bright side first, and then later on we're going to go in with like a shadowy color. We're going to paint the right side. So you got to be patient for those. We're just painting half trees, just their shiny looking half, and then later on we're going to do their dark half. Bonus points if you can change up your color every time you go and reload your brush. Just change it up just a little bit. Maybe add a little bit more green, maybe add a little bit of brown, maybe add some yellow, maybe add a tiny bit of white. These are all quite autumn looking colors, like a little bit more on the reddish brownish side of things. It's not like bright green or anything. But if you can mix up your colors slightly differently every time you go to reload your brush, you're going to set your trees apart from one another. And that's a good thing because A, all trees are different and they like to be set apart from one another. And B, it's just going to give your painting a lot more interesting things to look at, as well as more variety and more depth. So be sure to mix up your paint every time you go to reload. Just add a tiny smidge of a different color into it, and then you should be, as they say, golden. Very reminiscent of the painting they were doing. Now these trees, they do take a little while. I mean, it's a very small canvas, so it's not going to take super long. But these trees, they take your time setting them, each of them apart. Be patient with it, because as soon as you try to rush it, they're just going to turn into blobs, and you don't want them to be blobs. You want them to have a bit of a shape and an indication that they're actually trees. I've darkened the color up a little bit, just using a little bit of green and a little bit of brown. They cancel each other out into, if you leave mostly green in there, it's still going to be a little bit of green. But it makes it for like a very dull kind of color, which is cool for the shadows. I even added a smidge of blue, because the same principle applies here for the shadow side of these trees. The more you mix up your color in between reloading, reloading your brush with paint, then the more variety and more depth and the more lively your painting is going to get. But I added in a smidge of blue because usually things that are in the shadow, they tend to be a little bit more on the blue side of things. So you can definitely add in a smidge of blue as well as some brown and some green. And then see what that does. Now, obviously, some of these trees are going to catch some light. And some of them are going to block some of those sun rays and leave behind a shadow. So I'm just blocking that in here at the very base, at the bottom of these trees. And just horizontal strokes. And you can pull those all the way through the waterline, and you get a little bit of depth there too. Here I got a little bit of white, kind of the same color as that we started out with at the very start of the painting. And with the very edge of the brush, I'm just gonna put in a couple of these highlights on these trees over on the very edge. That was a bit of a smudge, but you know, we're gonna paint over that. If you don't like it, that's the good thing about painting. You can change anything. A couple of ripples here in the water, and then clean dry brush, very broad horizontal strokes to kind of blend them in with the old water colors. Well, I can't say watercolors because watercolors is a different thing, but like the colors that were resembling the water. And I'm putting in a couple of more extra sun rays here at the very top corner. That way we can smudge it up a little bit. I'm grabbing the clean dry brush and pull them across, and it really starts to look like the sun is shining down on these trees and on the water that's below it. And that way you get the indication that they're lit up, and it's kind of like it's like a very dark, shady looking hill, but the sun is just rising above that hill, and then the sun rays hitting that tree line, coming down, and it's a great way to kind of like mimic that. Look at that. That's shiny. That's super golden. I like it. What's next? A little bit of these watery ripples. I kind of want to draw a little bit more attention to this center tree, the one that's in the middle. So that one gets the brightest spots. And then once again, with a clean dry brush, we broad horizontal strokes to just smudge that paint up a little bit. And then to finish it off, I want to put a couple of very dark trees here at the front just to cover up those super bright sunbeams that we put in earlier. Just to create a little bit more depth to it and just add a little bit of, what would I call it? Mysticism. Yeah, mysticism is a good word. I like mysticism. So that makes it a little bit more mysterious. That also kind of means that maybe some of these trees are getting some light, and maybe the other side of this riverbank is not, which adds some interesting dynamics to this little painting. And maybe this riverbank is kind of like curving and coming toward, maybe it's a lake. It could be a lake, could be a pond. And I'm putting a couple of trees over on that dark side too. And if you plan this a little bit better than I did, you probably wouldn't have to paint that many trees what is going to be covered by these dark trees. But I like to go with the flow and just do whatever. So totally doesn't matter if you're covering up some of the background. That's what I'm trying to get to. Don't feel bad like, oh no, I'm going to smudge over this tree that I worked so hard on. Like, how long has it been? It's been 10 minutes. You haven't worked that hard on it. It's super easy. You can do this. So don't feel bad if you put some of these big trees over the background that you spent a couple minutes on painting. That's just the way it goes sometimes. As long as you're having fun, it is all good. A couple of grassy, leafy things here at the front. I'm using a very thin looking brush. Just using the chiseled edge in kind of like fell swoops, like a ninja, putting those leaves in. And then just with a little bit of blue and the old color that was already on the brush mixed with a tiny speck of white, I'm putting in this kind of like bluish. It's funny, like it's in the shade. So technically I should call this shadow color, but it's like the highlight of that shadow color, if you know what I mean. So it is in the dark, but even the dark sometimes has a little bit of a brighter spot. And I'm just using this kind of like mix of blue and black and white to get that done. It's very subtle. And we pull a couple of more leafy things in there. And that's it. We're getting to the end of our painting today. I hope you all had a great time watching. I hope you tried at home. These canvases are super cheap, dollar store. Just go grab them. It's good. Paint, invest in those. But should be all good. Hope you had a good time. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We will catch you on the next episode. Have an awesome day, everybody.